This show...
Taps Inside Racing, brought to you by Mitre Bike.
Welcome to Inside Racing. I'm at Sydney's Star City Casino and I have an appointment with a truly remarkable man who has walked on the sunny side of the street for most of his life. Renowned author Dick Francis has lived to the full every day of his 81 years, relentlessly pursuing his dreams and realising most of them. He served with distinction in the Royal Air Force during World War II, and after the war rose to great prominence in the world of British national hunt racing. He rode 350 winners, he was champion jockey in 53, 54, and was retained for 4 seasons by none other than the Queen Mother. His recollections of that famous Grand National of 1956 will fascinate you, and so will the footage of an unforgettable event. Dick Francis is currently in Australia promoting his 41st book, and I'm about to introduce you to a man whose books have sold more than 70 million copies around the world. For years and years, I've been under the impression that you were a Pom. To my total surprise, I learn you're a Taffy.
Yes.
You're a Welshman.
Yes, I'm a Welshman. And as a child, I used to go back to Wales a lot and onto my grandfather's farm. That's where I started to ride on donkeys, really. My brother and I was a professional jockey from the time I was about 4, because my brother bet me sixpence, no, a shilling it was, that I wouldn't sit on the donkey facing the tail and he would chase it over a jump. I fell off 6 times, but I won my shilling in the end.
So that was your first professional appearance as a jockey?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, you graduated to ponies soon after?
Yes, and my father, he used to be a jockey before the First World War, but he didn't go back to racing after the war, and he went into the horse dealing business, and he had a big stable, and I was riding all sorts of ponies and horses right from the time I was no height. I always wanted to be a jockey, a steeplechase jockey, but mother and father weren't very keen that I should be. He knew the trials and tribulations of what a jockey's life was like.
You were coming up 20 years of age when you joined the Royal Air Force, but it was a long time before you got to fly an aeroplane.
Yes, I had 3 years in the Royal Air Force, 1 year in England, and then I was sent out to the Middle East. We had to go right round South Africa and up the Suez, and I had 2 years in the Middle East, sort of chasing the 8th Army up and coming back when they were retreated. And I kept putting in applications to my commanding officer to go flying.
Now, I believe you put in a total of 37 applications.
Well, it was around that figure, yeah.
Yeah, how frustrating.
And one of the last times I put, well, it wasn't the last time, but one time I put my applications in, and it was a new squadron leader. He said, "Well, Francis, I hear you want to go flying." I said, "Yes, please, sir." He said, "What sports are you interested in?" I said, "Hunting, shooting, and fishing, sir." "Get out of here, I don't want any cheek from you." So that was, my entry into flying was delayed. But eventually one of my commanding officers did go along with my thoughts, and I was sent down to Rhodesia, which is now Zimbabwe, and I did my flying training down there. I went back from there as a pilot officer, I'd been trained on fighters. I went back to England, I was flying Spitfires, but it was at the time of the war when the fighters weren't used nearly as much as they had been during the Battle of Britain, and they were short of bomber pilots, so they took me as a guinea pig. They took me as a pilot officer, and they took a sergeant pilot as well, and put us straight on to Wellingtons to see how we could get on from flying Spitfires to Wellingtons. I got through all right. I don't know what happened to the sergeant pilot. He went somewhere else, and eventually it was like getting out of an MGB GT car into a truck to get out of the Spitfire into an old Wellington. Yeah. But I got through all right.
Now, you were flying a Wellington on one occasion when you had a chilling moment. In fact, you tell me the only really terrifying moment during your flying days in World War II.
You had lots of anti-aircraft shells bursting around you, but I tried to keep just above the height of those. But I did. My observer was up in his dome on top of the plane. He's, "Governor," he said, "Emmy Messerschmitt on our tail." So fortunately, we were very near a cloud, and I did some avoiding action and dived into the cloud. Never saw him again. But it was a nasty moment for a few minutes.
Did you get the same exhilaration flying a Spitfire or a Wellington or a Lancaster as you did riding a bull-striding steeplechaser?
No. There's nothing more enjoyable than riding a really good steeplechaser. When I went into, when I became a professional, because I started off as an amateur, but the stewards thought I was taking the bread and butter out of the amateurs, out of the professionals' mouths, because I was riding so many horses. There were only, in 1948, there were only 3 professional jockeys who'd had more rides than me that season, and I wasn't getting paid for it. So they said, "You must turn professional." So when I turned professional, I was offered a very good job of riding for Lord Bister, who had a very powerful team of horses. Silver Fame, Royman, Faneur, Freddie Fox, terrific horses. And there's nothing more pleasing but to ride a horse like that and getting the others behind you and say, "Come on, follow me, you devils."
Yeah, sure. There's a racetrack in northern Wales at a place called Bangor-on-Dee.
Bangor-on-Dee, yes.
Does that ring a bell to you?
I had my first ride there when I went into racing. I was still an amateur, and it was some time before I could break my duck and ride a winner. But in spring 1948, I think it was, I had 2 winners there one day, and then the following year I had 3 winners. It was a terrific track for me.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Now, right throughout your career as a jumps jockey, you were extremely well known for walking the course, something that not all jockeys did, but you would never go to a strange track without familiarising yourself with the layout.
Oh, it was definitely, you must do that, see, because you get to know the lie of the land. Whether if there, say there are 16 fences in a 2-mile steeplechase, and if you can gain a length at every one by jumping it properly, that's 16 lengths you've got to make up from the rest of them. Got to make up to catch you. It's much the best thing to do.
All part of the professional package.
Oh, most definitely.
Now, Dick, in 1953, you were paid the supreme compliment by Her Majesty the Queen Mother when you were retained as her jumps jockey, and at that time she had a fairly strong stable of jumpers.
Yes, she did. Mm-hmm.
This is surely the hallmark of the integrity of any rider.
Well, it was a great honour. It was much, and
how was the approach made?
Well, her trainer, Peter Caslett, he approached me one day at Sandown Park. I suppose I had ridden a race for ridden a horse for him in an earlier race, and I suppose he thought, well, I'd done all right. And he was looking for another jockey because his other one was retiring. And he approached me at Sandown Park one day and he said, Dick, will you accept a retainer to be my first jockey? Well, I said, it's a great honor, I said, but I can't really accept a first retainer from you because Lord Bicester, I've been writing for him for some years, and he's a wonderful man. I can't say no to him and yes to you. Oh, no, he said, that's all right. We know Lord Bicester's getting an old man, and he won't be going on for long. And if you're going to ride one for him and I run one in the same race, I'll get another jockey. But he said, I'd like to have you as my first jockey if you're available. So this was early on in the season. Before the end of the season, Lord Bicester died, unfortunately, an old man. And so I was first jockey to Peter Caslett's stable from then on. And I remember before I had one ride for him, he came into the weighing room at Newton Abbot. It was the first meeting of the season. He sat down beside me. He said, Dick, he said, I hope this is going to be a successful association. He said, I want you to remember two things. First is, he said, every horse you ride for me is doing its best. You're not going out to give it a run round. And the second thing is, you'll never look round during the closing stages of a race. He said, of course, he said, you need to look round sometime when you're out in the country, see how the opponents are going. Well, I tried to remember this all the time. And one day at Lingfield Park, I was riding the first of the number of fancied rides I rode for the Queen Mother, a horse called Marteau Vu. And we were all in the parade ring beforehand. The Queen Mother was there, and Peter Caslett. He said, Dick, he said, I think you'll win this race. He said, give him a nice ride, and he said, as you jump the last, make the best of your way home. Well, I did this. I had a great ride, and as I jumped the last, I rode out for the winning post. I didn't have to pick up my stick because I knew I was winning quite easily. And halfway up the straight, I could hear this tremendous cheering or shouting going on. I thought, my God, I'm being tackled, and I daren't look round. I sat down and rode hard for the winning post. When I got past the winning post, I could look round then. There was nothing within any distance of me. It was one of Her Majesty's early winners. And, you know, very popular she was.
Dick Francis rode the Queen Mother's horse Devonlock in the 1956 Grand National at Aintree. After the break, you'll see why this Grand National is still talked about almost half a century later.
The going is good and the pace is fast, and it's far too soon to draw any conclusions. But Armorial, Demata and Sundew are out in front. At Aintree. That proves the popularity of the National. This year, Her Majesty the Queen graced the occasion by her presence, accompanied by the Queen Mother and Princess Margaret. Desperate last-minute signalling by the bookies' tic-tac men can now be witnessed, for it's nearly time for the start of the greatest steeplechase in the world, and all the thrills that inevitably go with it. There's no draw for places in the National, and after temperamental runners have been got into line, the starter sends them away. It's a field of 29, and we travel with them on the gallop to the first jump. One of the most crucial in the whole race. Armorial 3 and Demata are first over, but 4 come to grief. They're early missed, High Guard, the only grey, Must and Reverend Prince. The going is good and the pace is fast, and it's far too soon to draw any conclusions. But Armorial, Demata and Sundew are out in front. Armorial leads over the 12th. This one proved too much for Athenian. Into the country now for the start of the second round, with Armorial still going beautifully. Armorial is still showing his heels to the field, but now Devonlock is after him. Yes, Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother's well-fancied Devonlock came into the picture at this stage and jumped the canal turn second with Eagle Lodge. Over the the 26th jump, and Amorial is down, Amorial is out of it. And the way is definitely clear for Devon Lock to take command from now on. It's Devon Lock, Eagle Lodge, and ESB. Eagle Lodge takes the 29th, just ahead of Devon Lock, but there's nothing in it. Entree loses his jockey here. But there's only one thought among the spectators. Will Devon Lock win? He leads over the last fence, and he gallops on strongly towards an almost certain triumph. The excitement was terrific. But now the newsreel camera captures for you the greatest sensation of all. The incredible has happened, and only 50 yards from the post. The crowd is stunned as ESB goes on to win. An appalling moment for Devon Lock's jockey, Dick Francis. Bitterly disappointed as she must have been, the Queen Mother is reported as saying simply, that's racing.
But I've looked at this newsreel time and time again. It was before the race was televised, and just as we're approaching the water jump, you see Devon Lock prick his ears. So I was here last time round, a sign of recognition. As he pricked his ears, this crescendo hit him. God, his hindquarters just refused to act. He went down on his belly and slid along the ground with his 4 feet out in front of him and his hind feet behind. How I didn't fall off him, I don't know, but he got to his feet. If I could have got him going then, I was so far enough in front to have won. But he pulled all the muscles on his hindquarters and he more or less collapsed again. And I had to get off and walk away in disgust.
There have been many theories about the reason for that unique fall.
Oh,
I've never seen a horse fall in quite the same way. It was a belly flop.
Absolutely.
One theory was that he, as you said, tried to jump the imaginary water jump.
No, you can tell where the
jump,
horse is going to jump.
It.
You can feel him get his legs under him and take off. But
so what do you really feel was the reason for his fall?
I think it was the shock of the noise. It was
the roar of the crowd.
The roar of the crowd, and it just wasn't to be a royal winner that day. That was probably, if that hadn't happened, I won the race. Perhaps my author's agent might not have got an introduction to me and got me to write my autobiography. Yeah. I might never have written a book if that
may well be, Dick. But to have a Grand National win in your scrapbook would also have been a wonderful moment. Now, that is 45 years ago.
That's 1956. Is that 45 years ago?
Yes. Now, are there still days when you're at home in the Cayman Islands that you reflect on that race and say to yourself out loud, why did he have to fall that day? Are you still frustrated by it?
Oh, I am. Yes, I am. I would love to ride in it again and have another opportunity. I rode Devon Lock a number of times afterwards.
So he fully recovered?
He'd fully recovered. He ran in a hurdle race at Nottingham about 6 months after this, and he was only going for a run round. But you know, Peter Caslett's horses were always win if you could, and a mile out he took up a bit and he won easily by 10 lengths. I had a terrific reception, and I won a couple more races on him, steeplechases, and in January 1957 he ran in the big race at Sandown Park, the Mildmay Memorial, and Arthur Freeman rode him because I was laid up. I'd had a fall just previously and recovering, and he broke down. His tendon went in this particular race, and he was never any good after that. The Queen Mother very kindly gave him to Bruce Hobbs, who was assistant trainer to Boyd Rochford at that time, and he used him on the Newmarket Heath for teaching the two-year-olds there how to canter and gallop.
I've always believed the bravest of all men were the pioneer aviators and jumps jockeys. Now, I can't imagine there'd be a jumps jockey alive who doesn't consciously think as he goes out for a race, I wonder if I'll get back unscathed.
No, you're wrong.
Did you ever think that
You never
way?
think that.
No.
You always think you're going out to win. And I rode a horse for Lord Bicester in one Grand National, a horse called Senlac Hill. He'd given me some terrible falls because he couldn't judge the pace or judge the distance from a fence. He used to gallop into the open ditches and turn over. But I managed to win a couple of races on him at Lingfield to qualify him. You know, he won races valuable enough to run in the National. And then they were going to run him in this Grand National. I thought, well, I shall never get past the first open ditch, was the third fence. And he got over that, he rattled it like mad, and all 4.5 miles, he rattled everything. And only 5 horses finished in this Grand National, and he was number 5. But I was cantering in, you know, completing my course, and Raymond Glendenning, who was doing the racecourse commentary, he said, oh, here's Senlac Hill coming up. He must have fallen, and he's just cantering in. But I was completing, a long way behind, but I completed the course.
Increasing his lead, Early Mist was followed by Mont Tremblant, Irish Lizard, Overshadow, the Grey, and Senlac Hill, the only others to finish the course. Happy triumph for his owner, Mr. Griffin, his trainer, Mr. O'Brien, and, of course, his jockey. It was certainly a thrilling moment for all concerned, and to judge by the picture, quite a number of people were. I can only hope Early Mist himself appreciated the great ovation he rightly received. And to guess the winner, especially in view of what happened at the Canal Turn. Here there was a very grim pile-up, accounting for Herber, Parasol II, and Whispering Steel.
Most flat jockeys can reel off their list of injuries from memory. I imagine jumps jockeys would need to write them down. They're so numerous.
Yeah.
Did you have any really serious injuries?
My worst injury, I crushed some vertebrae in my back just before I went to America to ride in the International Steeplechase at Belmont Park. And I was lying on the floor at the Beaufort Hunt meeting where this happened. The fall was all right, but another horse fell on top of me and crushed my vertebrae. And I could see the trip to America going in 2 weeks' time very much. But fortunately, I went to see the specialist in London, Bill Tucker. He fitted me up with a brace and put me in plaster for a few days then. And that was my worst injury. I broke my nose 5 times. I broke my collarbones 6 times each side. Fractured my skull a couple of times, but nothing's prevented me from walking about.
No. But Dick, do you carry any of the legacies of these injuries to this day, at 81 years of age?
Yes,
you must have a few
that
aches and
finger
pains.
won't bend. I can bend it, but as soon as I let it go, it sticks. That's the only injury. Yeah. I have a recurring dislocation shoulder, which I have to be very careful of. Every night when I go to bed, I strap it down with a bandage round me.
Yeah. You're not bitter about any of these things?
Not a bit, no.
You'd do it all again?
Yeah, I'd love another go at the Grand National.
You rode in 8 Grand Nationals altogether, completed the course 3 times. Now, we hear about these legendary obstacles, the Chair, Valentine's, Beecher's Brook. Which is the most intimidating?
Oh, the Chair is the most intimidating. It's right in front of the stands, and it is more intimidating because it's rather narrow. Out in the country, the whole fences are right across the course. But if you're really swinging into it and get your horse to take off and go as far down, I rode some terrific jumpers at Aintree. I rode a horse called Possible for the Duchess of Norfolk. Fabulous jumper. And he'd take off outside of the wings and land just as far the other side. There's nothing more thrilling than to jump a big fence like that on a great jumper.
Yeah. Dick, I read that you still have the occasional dream that you're riding in the National. And one of the dreams, a recurring dream, has been the ride on Devon Lock.
Yes. It was only about 2 or 3 years ago I dreamt I won the race. And the next time I saw Her Majesty, the Queen Mother, I told her about this. She said, "Oh, I wish it had been."
Yeah.
And, whenever we see each other, and see her quite often, she always brings up, and we talk about the Grand National 1956.
Allow me to remind you of a lovely quote attributed to you about steeplechase jockeys. Although it may seem that steeplechase jockeys are recklessly risking their lives in a dangerous sport, it is a matter of record that the death rate of window cleaners is very much higher. If any window cleaners' wives happen to be reading this, I sincerely apologise for passing on this most unwelcome piece of news.
Is that in my autobiography, or is it in one of the novels? I know, I remember
not sure.
writing it.
Yeah, it's very good.
Oh, their death toll is very high, window cleaners.
In part 2 of the Dick Francis story, the famous author recalls the fall that ended his racing days and the job that launched his writing career.
But I'd also been offered a job of writing for the Sunday Express. The editor said, would I write half a dozen articles for his newspaper? Those half a dozen articles went on to 16 years.
Dick talks of the book he really didn't have time to write, but somehow met the deadline on the Lester Piggott biography.
So I finished Break in May, went into the publishers, and instead of having a break, a holiday, I went straight into doing the Lester Piggott thing.
He talks of the endless hours of work in every book.
But the first page, and the first paragraph especially, takes me a long, long time. You've got to grab your audience on page 1.
He bristles as he refutes the suggestion that his late wife Mary was the author of his books.
I was furious. If he walked in that door now, although I'm 71, I'd go over and give him a bloody good hiding.
Join us next time for part 2 of the Dick Francis story.
Racing, brought to you by Mitabite.
Last time, Dick Francis talked about his childhood in Wales and his days as a fighter and bomber pilot in the Royal Air Force.
They were short of bomber pilots, so they took me as a guinea pig. They took me as a pilot officer, and they took a sergeant pilot.